Hello everyone, welcome back to my series of understanding educational research. Thank you very much for tuning in. How are you today? As usual, today I'm going to walk you through some of the most established journals in the fields of education and applied linguistics. Together we'll handpick two interesting pieces of abstracts and I'll share my thoughts about them with you. Okay, shall we get started with the first one for today? So the first abstract is from Asia Pacific Journal of Education, and the title of abstract 1 is The Role of Graduate Students' Learning Strategies in Reducing the English Medium Instruction Avoidance, the Mediation Effect of Language Anxiety. So it's quite a lengthy title, but it's quite comprehensive as well. So let's break it down into smaller pieces a bit. Learning strategy. Learning strategies refer to different tactics that both students or teachers apply and adapt to enhance their learning outcomes. And then we have English medium instruction, quite a familiar term by now, I guess. That's the delivery of educational content through English language. So avoidance here can mean a lot of things. But I think the key points here is that students with avoidance tend to withdraw themselves from participating in EMI class, and that can affect negatively their learning outcomes. So I think if you remember from the very first episode where we talk about a bilingual Canadian article, and the researcher actually touched upon the very issue of language anxiety or language insecurity. So that's where learners or speakers of a language feel a bit anxious and insecure about using a foreign language. Okay, so in this case, it might be English. So I think this study pointed out to the majority of the literature that focus on English medium instruction, and especially how to reduce students' negative response to EMI courses. So the aims of this research is to look at how students can reduce their anxiety about learning in English by adopting various learning strategies and avoiding the avoidance of EMI courses. What about the methodology that they used? I think they used a questionnaire survey that was conducted on 208 postgraduate students from 15 different EMI courses in the School of Business Administration of a Taiwanese university. They also talk a bit about the data analysis process here. They use partial least square structural equation modeling to explore the relationship between different learning strategies. So very interesting that they mentioned the PLSA SEM, because it's a type of multiple linear regression that takes into account different variables and determine the strength of the relationship by looking at the coefficients among variables. So it's essentially a quantitative research study that we haven't seen so much so far in the literature. So that's quite a new approach. What about the findings of this study? We know that English anxiety has a positive relationship to EMI avoidance. So that means, the more anxious students are about their English, the more likely that they will be less engaged in EMI courses. Similarly, we see there's a negative relationship between critical thinking and English anxiety, and also effort regulation has a negative relation to EMI avoidance, and English anxiety meditates the relationship between critical thinking and EMI avoidance. So lots of relationships between different learning strategies and different variables have been explored, which is really interesting. So the implication of the study are wide-ranging, I would say. So principles and guidance from these variables could be developed further into learning techniques and reduce stress for students. So my thoughts on this study: obviously this study makes a very significant contribution to the literature, merely talking from the methodological choice. It's also worth noting that the type of data analysis performed here only shows the relationship or the correlational relationship rather than the causational relationship. I'm quite intrigued with the application of quantitative methods to measure some qualitative concepts such as, anxiety, critical thinking, avoidance, and I do think that this study would have benefited to be backed up with some qualitative evidence though, to explore further the working mechanism underlying these relationships that they've just highlighted. Okay, very good start. So we move on to the next one. So the second abstract is from the Innovations in Education and Teaching International Journal, and the title of the abstract is Coping with EMI, English as a Medium Instruction, Mainland China Student Strategies at the University in Macau. Okay, so again, the study context is in China, but now a different university in Macau, and we already heard about the term EMI and maybe already familiarized yourself with the definition by now. Okay, and we also talk about students' strategies. Okay, so let's talk about the context of this study, and it's located in a Macau university. We're not entirely sure about which program were chosen for the study yet, but the aims of the study was to really investigate what strategies students whose first language is not English cope with EMI, because this area is quite underrepresented as highlighted in the abstract. The term cope with EMI is a bit vague for now. What exactly is meant by coping here? Is it to do with academic performance, or is it to do with language, or is it to do with any other kind of coping mechanism? It could have been benefited for more clarity here, right? Okay, so let's talk about the methodology that they use. So data were gathered through semi-structured interviews and reflective journals from 14 mainland Chinese EMI learners. So again, the focus is on learners or students, and they use semi-structured interviews and reflective journals. So if you recall, and I've already talked about semi-structured interviews and reflective journals from the previous videos, you can maybe go back and watch some of them for your information. But now let's talk about the findings of the research. So the findings of research show empirical support for the positive role of first language in EMI learning. So, the use of Chinese Mandarin, in this case I'm assuming, would be beneficial for students' learning outcomes in the EMI context. And the implications really call for critical attention to the role of learner agency and contextual realities in shaping EMI learners' actual strategy use in context. Again, the findings and even the implications are very consistent with what we have read so far, even in the Thai context and in lots of other countries' context, about the need, about the practice of translanguaging. Can you see that? The positive role of using first language in EMI learning, which means that they can complement learning in English with some help or with some support from their first language. Here in this case is Chinese. So another evidence from China to show that translanguaging can help with students learning, and that can be part of students' coping mechanism, or actually if it's not even part of the official curriculum yet, but for students, they have been using translanguaging or been resorting to their first language to achieve their learning outcomes as a result of their learner agency, which is great. Okay, so shall we talk about the keyword for today, which is learning strategy, of course. So learning strategies is about how students and teachers can apply and adapt different practical tactics and even techniques to enhance their learning outcomes. It's an important concept, and it's one of the most important concepts really to look into because of the huge implications of this on learners and also on the whole pedagogical planning. The two abstracts that we just looked at actually explore learning strategy from very different angles. They really looked at the relationship between learning strategy with other EMI variables, and these areas of research still remain quite underexplored, I would say. The issues of learner anxiety or learners' avoidance from EMI courses, how students' agency are shaped through their use of learning strategy. These areas really need more research attention, and it's important and also fascinating to see again evidence from China show the positive use of first language to achieve learning gains. Okay, which again takes it back to the translanguaging and multilingual classroom discussions. Okay, so my final question for you: what learning strategies have you been using for your favorite or least favorite subject? Let me know in the comment, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.